$386,000. Gone. Just like that. Not to a scammer, not to a failed investment, to a man she bought cologne for. My wife emptied our entire retirement account to shower her lover with gifts. And I didn't even know his name. Welcome back to Revenge with James, the place where betrayal meets clarity, and sometimes quiet payback. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, if you've ever worked hard while someone else spent freely behind your back, this one's for you. I used to wake up before the sun, not because I had to, because I wanted to. The house was quiet then, just the hum of the fridge, the kettle coming to a boil, and the low creak of the front porch when I stepped out to stretch. That little moment, bare feet on cold wood, coffee in hand, watching the street lights fade, that was peace to me. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom home, brick, faded green shutters, lawn that never stayed perfect, but I tried. Same neighborhood since, same neighbors waving in the mornings, same dog barking 2 doors down, same rhythm, and I liked that. She'd sleep in, said she needed rest. I never argued. I just packed my lunch, kissed her forehead and left for work. Clock in, fix what's broken, clock out. Not glamorous, but honest. Every dollar I made, every overtime shift, every holiday I missed, I put away for us. Nothing big, just mornings where we didn't rush, just time finally ours. Every first of the month, I moved a fixed amount to our retirement account. I'd even print the receipt, leave it on the desk so she could see. She never said much. Just a quiet, thanks, babe. I took that as trust, not physically, but mentally, emotionally. Maybe while I was planning forever, she was planning something else entirely. Not just for how she looked, but how she made you feel like you were the only person in the room. At least, she used to. She called me sir the first time we spoke. I remember that. And when I laughed and said I'm not that old, she smiled and said give it time. We married 2 years later. Dreams bigger than our town. I think over time our life started to feel small to her. Her sister Marcy was the one who always questioned things. When I bought a used truck instead of a new one, she said Lydia deserves nice things. When I picked up weekend shifts, she whispered, "You're never around, are you?" I laughed it off back then. Now I wonder if that's where the rot started. I told him to shut up. He didn't bring it up again. Then there was Mr. Halpern, the neighbor, retired mechanic, always sitting on his porch. One day he said, "You work too hard, son. She's always coming home late with nothing in her hands." I nodded, smiled, changed the subject. What I didn't say was I'd noticed too. The text she hid with a quick swipe. The perfume I didn't recognize. The nights she said she needed space. But the moment that stuck with me most, we were at a dinner with Nate and his wife. Lydia looked me dead in the eye and said, "You always talk about the future, but you're never really here." I laughed, but it stung, because I knew she meant it. I didn't know I was the only one holding anything at all. Every deposit, every overtime shift, every weekend I spent working instead of resting, it wasn't just for a number in a bank account. It was for dignity. It was so I'd never have to ask anyone for help in my old age. My father used to patch his boots with glue and cardboard, but he never complained. He'd say, "A man doesn't need a lot, just enough and a name that still means something when he's gone." I took that to heart. Not golf courses and cruise ships, just enough to sit by a lake with the woman I built everything with, sip coffee without checking the time, and know I'd earned it without owing anyone a damn thing. The kind that doesn't need big gestures or public praise, just the quiet knowing that you're appreciated, that she saw me, that she chose me still. A small inheritance to a niece or nephew, maybe even enough to start a scholarship in my father's name. And the moment I saw it drained, not spent but stripped, it wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. The way her eyes darted to her phone when it buzzed and how she always flipped it face down after checking. I used to pick her up after work. She asked me to stop, said it made her feel watched. I thought I was helping. She thought I was hovering. A friend in need. I nodded. Didn't ask again. Something floral, exotic. She said I was imagining it. I stopped getting goodnight kisses, and I stopped asking for them, because I didn't want to hear her say she was too tired. She'd stare past me at dinner, say fine when I asked how her day went. She started saying I'm more than weak. I just wasn't ready to call it by name yet. There was a time she couldn't fall asleep unless my arm was around her. The inks faded, but the words stayed sharp. When we had our first big power outage, middle of January, she lit candles all around the living room. We played cards wrapped in blankets. She laughed when I lost every hand, said, "You're bad at cards but good at showing up." That meant something back then. I remember her birthday one year. I'd saved for months to buy her a necklace she pointed at once in a magazine. She cried when I gave it to her. held my face like I was the only thing in the world she ever wanted. I remember walking into the kitchen and seeing her dancing to that Motown song she loved, barefoot, holding a wooden spoon, just swaying while the soup boiled. I leaned on the doorframe and just watched. That was love to me, not flowers or vacations. Just that moment. We didn't have everything, but we had each other. Or maybe I just thought we did. But I remember how tightly she held my hand at her mother's funeral, and how she whispered, "Don't leave me, okay?" And I said never. And I meant it. It was a Thursday, late afternoon. I stopped by the boutique on Main Street, the one Lydia said she was helping her friend open. When I walked in, I saw her across the room. She was laughing, not polite laughter, not the kind I'd seen her give to neighbors or clients. No, this one was different, warm, real, like she used to laugh with me, shirt sleeves rolled up, leaning in like he knew something I didn't, like he owned a version of her I'd never met. I stood there too long. She looked up. Our eyes met. Didn't ask who he was. I just walked out, past racks of clothes I helped pay for, past the store window where her name was painted in gold. Instead, she took a long shower, ate a salad alone at the counter, and said, "You've been distant lately." That was the moment. The first real blow. Not because of what she did, but because she didn't even try to hide it. It was silence. The kind that lets you know you've already been replaced. I sat in my truck, key still in the ignition, hands on the wheel like I was about to drive somewhere. But I was just the faint ticking of the engine cooling beneath the hood, and the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. What changed? Was it me? Was I too predictable? Too steady? Did I work too hard trying to protect the future, that I forgot to keep the present alive? I was just paused. I gave her everything, time, stability, a retirement we could have lived well on, and she spent it like it was pocket change on someone who hadn't earned a single minute of her life. And when I finally turned the key and drove home, I didn't feel like a husband anymore. I felt like a stranger pulling into the wrong driveway. Back in 2007, she lost her job. No severance. She came home shaking, holding her handbag like it was the last thing that hadn't been taken. I didn't let her spiral. I took a second job nights, cleaned industrial floors at the old manufacturing plant. I told people I just wanted to save more. I never said it was to keep our mortgage paid, our lights on, her car running. I wrote the check. He disappeared 2 months later. She cried and said family's messy. So I stayed silent. And there was, the night she came home after her business trip. Eyes red, voice shaky. She said she made a mistake. Said it only happened once. I asked no question, because I wanted to forgive her more than I wanted the truth. So I buried it. That night. That ache. All of it. But now I see it clearer. She left in a rush. Like she couldn't get away from me fast enough. 2 days later, I needed a copy of our property insurance file. It used to be in the desk drawer. Third one down. Labeled. Stacked. Just like I left it. So I checked her computer. She never changed the password. I opened it. And there it was. She'd requested that her portion of the retirement account, what little was left, be redirected to a new name. Not mine. His. I read that line 5 times. 5. They didn't even bother to hide. I didn't even close the laptop. I just stood there, quiet, still, and from that moment on, I wasn't interested in saving anything. I was ready to reclaim everything, quiet, still, and from that moment on, I wasn't interested in saving anything. I nodded. She didn't notice I was watching her really watching. Emails. Then I made 2 folders. One for me, one for the lawyer. I went to the bank in person, moved what I legally could, adjusted the title on the car, paused all joint cards. She wouldn't notice. Not right away. That was the point. I started scanning documents at night, rotated passwords, created backups, changed emergency contacts. I didn't rush, didn't make noise, because this time, I wasn't reacting. I was reclaiming. And when I watched her across the dinner table, laughing at her phone, texting God knows who, I didn't feel anger. I felt nothing. Didn't ask why the property taxes now came to my email. She didn't know I was already pulling out the beams. I stopped covering her insurance, filed forms she never saw, redirected mail to a P.O. box she didn't know existed. I'd nod, pour her another glass of wine, and think, you have no idea what tomorrow looks like anymore. I even let her take out a small loan in our joint name. Didn't stop her, because I already had a court date. And that paper was going to bury her in front of the judge. Still called me boring, when I chose to stay in instead of joining her for her networking events. And when I looked at her across the table, so sure she'd won, I didn't feel the need to warn her, sitting at the edge of the bed while she slept like nothing had shifted. Maybe I should have let her win, let him play house in the home I built, and let them both realize too late that comfort without character doesn't last. Because the truth is, none of this felt good. But at night, when the lights were off and the silence was heavy, I wasn't proud. I was just awake. There's a weight that comes with watching someone destroy themselves, even if you're the one holding the evidence, even if they deserve it. I used to dream about our retirement, a cabin, bookshelves, quiet dinners. Now I dream of clean exits and unlisted phone numbers, or a man trying to get even because he doesn't know what else to do with the pieces. Either way, I was too far in to stop, too hurt to forgive, too awake to go back to sleep. I pulled into the driveway and saw her car was gone, but her laptop was still open on the counter. She never closed it properly. I wasn't snooping, not this time. I wasn't looking for anything new, but it found me anyway. A notification popped up, an image attachment from her phone, a video. She raised a glass, leaned in toward him and said clear as day, to finally getting what I deserve. He was never going to use that money right anyway. Like my life, my loyalty was a punchline to a better man's story. Not the theft, not the cheating, not even the lies. It was the belief that I wouldn't find out, or that if I did, I'd do nothing. Just an envelope on the kitchen table, and the house that once held her future, now humming with absence. She opened it. Inside, divorce papers, bank statements, photographs, legal documentation for the removal of her name from every shared asset she once smiled over. She dropped into the chair like the floor moved. I watched from across the room, didn't speak, didn't blink. Eventually, she said, "You really did this behind my back?" I said, "No, you just stopped paying attention." The credit lines closed. Her car, repossessed. It was in my name. I didn't need to see it, but I imagine the silence afterward was louder than anything I could have said myself. She called. I didn't answer. She texted. I didn't reply, because the storm had already passed, and it had her name written all over it. I didn't destroy her. I just removed myself from the wreckage she built with her own hands. That was the first time I saw her really still. Not performing, not charming, just caught, like something had been pulled out of the air between us, and she finally felt the weight I'd been carrying all those years. I just said, then she should have bought her gifts with her own money. Nate didn't say much either, just poured me a drink, patted my shoulder, and said, "Knew you'd handle it your way. Quiet, clean, like a man." Probably when the money ran dry. That's the thing about users. They vanish when there's nothing left to take. She emailed once. Subject line, "I didn't think you'd ever go through with it." I stared at it. Didn't click. Didn't respond, because she wasn't writing to me. She was writing to the version of me she thought would always stay. Just her reflection, and the echo of everything she spent that wasn't hers to touch. I'm not the same man who started this story, but here's what I learned. You can't hold up a house when someone else is cutting the beams from underneath you. No joint accounts. No hidden messages. No one rearranging my piece when they're bored. I didn't become bitter. Didn't turn cold. I just became finished. And if you're watching this, and you've ever built something that someone else tore down for sport, I'll say this. You don't owe anyone your silence. You owe yourself your future.
He called me 3 times. Left 2 voicemails. No apology, just confusion. "You can't do this, Paul." He said it like I had broken some unspoken rule. Like I had the audacity to follow through. But I didn't yell. Didn't answer. Didn't need to. Because justice doesn't need to announce itself. It just arrives. Right on time. Later that week, I changed the locks, packed up Grandpa's few remaining things, and carried his favorite chair, the one Mike never let him use, into the front room of my own home. It creaked the same way it always had, like it had been waiting for him, voice shaking, asking if it was true. I told her yes, and that I had the documents. She didn't argue. She just said, "I always knew you were the one that cared." Then she hung up, but no one offered to help him pack. When I finally saw him again, face to face, it was outside the lawyer's office. He looked smaller, not in body, but in presence. Like the room no longer bent around him, just stared at me like a man still waiting for the world to return to how it was. And for a moment, I almost pitied him. But then I remembered all the Sundays Grandpa waited by the window, and all the times Mike said he was too busy. He lost the story he told himself about who he was, and what he deserved. And in that silence between us, I saw it land, no apology, no tearful confession, just understanding that he'd gambled a man's final years for a payout, and came up empty. I walked in quiet, hoping to be remembered, and walked out quieter, knowing I finally remembered myself. And for a long time, I thought I was the forgettable one, the background, the footnote, but I'm not, and I never was. The reason the stories never stopped getting told, even when they stopped being heard. I tell her the truth, that he was stubborn, and kind, and full of stories, and that in the end, he left me more than anyone ever saw. I still have that key, not because I need it, but because it reminds me what it costs to learn the difference between keeping someone close and keeping their memory alive. No clipped tones,
Just air that knows how to rest. They don't call anymore. No texts. No birthday cards. And I don't need them to. Because in the end, I didn't take back a house. I took back a room he built for someone who showed up, stayed late, and never asked for a thing. And if they ever ask how I got the house, the accounts, the name on the deed, I'll tell them the truth. I earned it the same way they lost it quietly. Was I wrong to protect what was mine? Not the money, not the house, but the memory of a man who raised me with his hands, not his wallet. And if keeping that alive meant taking back everything they tried to erase me from, then maybe I wasn't just defending a legacy. Maybe I was defending the only kind of love that didn't come with a receipt. I didn't need anyone to clap or call, or say I did the right thing, because I was there when he needed me. I saw what they didn't. I remembered what they forgot. And in the end, I didn't take anything that wasn't already mine. I just stopped letting them act like it was. 5 months later, the house feels different. Not bigger, just quieter. The kind of quiet that doesn't ache anymore. Mike hasn't called. Not once. And I don't check anymore. Would you have stayed silent while they locked the door you once opened for them? Would you have fought back quietly, or just let them write you out? What would you do if the very hands you helped steady turned and pretended they never knew your name? Comment if you've ever been pushed out of a story you helped build. Subscribe if you've ever had to protect what was yours, with nothing but truth and a shaking hand. And share this, not for me but for anyone who's been erased in their own family, and still found a way to come home.